Thank you, Mr. Chairman. According to the annual threat assessment, Russian President Putin probably believes, quote, that his approach to winning the war in Ukraine is paying off, and the Western and U.S. support to Ukraine is finite, end quote. For any of you, what lessons is Putin taking from the U.S. failure to further support Ukraine in its fight for national survival? And what lessons might China's Xi Jinping learn from this failure?
Senator, I'd be glad to address your question. I just returned from my 10th visit to Ukraine during the course of the war, and I left convinced that we're at a profoundly important crossroads for Ukraine, for European security, and for long-term American interests around the world. I think down one road with supplemental assistance approved by the Congress lies the very real possibility of cementing a strategic success for Ukraine and a strategic loss for Vladimir Putin's Russia. It's our assessment that with supplemental assistance, Ukraine can hold its own on the front lines through 2024 and into early 2025, that Ukraine can continue to exact costs against Russia, not only with deep penetration strikes in Crimea, but also against Russia's Black Sea Fleet, continuing the success which has resulted in 15 Russian ships sunk over the course of the last 6 months. In other words, with supplemental assistance, Ukraine can put itself in a position by the end of 2024, the beginning of 2025, where it could regain the offensive initiative and also put itself in a position to negotiate from a position of greater strength and achieve an outcome in which Putin's goal, which was to subjugate Ukraine and to control its choices, would be denied, where Ukraine could sustain itself as a strong, sovereign, independent country, anchor itself in Western institutions, and have the space and the security to recover from this terrible aggression and leave Russia to deal with the long-term consequences of Putin's brutal and foolish invasion. Down another road, however, without supplemental assistance, it seems to me, lies a much grimmer future. Ukraine is likely to lose ground, and probably significant ground, in 2024. I saw, in the Battle of Avdiivka, which forced a rushed withdrawal of Ukrainian forces just a couple of days before I was in Kyiv on this last visit, the consequences of that. One senior Ukrainian partner described what happened to me. He said that, our men fought as long and as hard as they could. We ran out of ammunition, and the Russians just kept coming. And I think without supplemental assistance in 2024, you're going to see more Avdiivkas. And that, it seems to me, would be a massive and historic mistake for the United States.
What lesson do you think the CCP will take from that?
I think the consequences of that are going to be felt not only by Ukrainians and in European security, but across the Indo-Pacific, where if we're seen to be walking away from support for Ukraine, not only is that going to feed doubts amongst our allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific, it's going to stoke the ambitions of the Chinese leadership in contingencies ranging from Taiwan to the South China Sea. So that's what I saw on this last visit. That's what I think's at stake for all of us. I think the truth is that the Ukrainians are not running out of courage and tenacity. They're running out of ammunition, and we're running out of time to help them.
Director, let's jump to the elephant in the room then. I want to thank you for your efforts to secure hostage releases and a ceasefire in the Middle East. Ramadan has now begun. Give us, to the best of your ability, a little bit on where things stand with those negotiations and what flashpoints you might be concerned could push us into a more regional conflict over the course of the next month.
Sure. For the last few months, since the last hostage return and ceasefire in the latter part of November, the president's been working very hard to try to renew that process. And I've traveled 8 times to meet with my Israeli, Egyptian, and Qatari partners and returned most recently on Saturday night from the last such trip. What's on the table right now is a potential agreement that has 3 main elements. The first would be the return of about 40 hostages. These are the remaining women hostages, older men, and hostages who are wounded or seriously ill, as the first step, as the first phase toward the return of all of the hostages, which I know the president is deeply committed. And that would be in return for a defined number of Palestinian prisoners held by the Israelis. The second element is a ceasefire of at least 6 weeks, again, as the first step toward what might be more enduring arrangements over time. And then the third element would be a major surge in humanitarian assistance, which, under the circumstances of a ceasefire, could actually be distributed effectively to people who so deeply need them. So we're going to continue to work hard at this. I don't think anybody can guarantee success. What I think you can guarantee is that the alternatives are worse. For innocent civilians in Gaza who are suffering under desperate conditions, for the hostages and their families who are suffering also under very desperate conditions, and for all of us. So we're going to keep at this.